Hello and welcome to Laura Banks' Fine Artist YouTube channel. Today I'm visiting Fonthill Castle in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. If you're not familiar with Fonthill Castle, it's a 44-room concrete castle that was built by Henry Chapman Mercer. Fonthill was built between 1908 and 1912 and served as Henry Chapman Mercer's home and showplace for his famed Moravian Tiles. If you're new to my channel, please check out my website at laurabanksfineart.com. There you can see any new artwork or any exhibitions that I'll be in. You can also check out more blog posts that I have about all my amazing art adventures. Also, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. It really helps my small channel grow. I'm going to start by backing up a little bit and giving a brief introduction into who Henry Mercer was. So Henry Mercer was actually a really interesting character. He was born in 1856 and he died in 1930. He was highly accomplished and can be described as an archaeologist, an anthropologist, a tile maker, a collector, a scholar, and even that is not an extensive list of everything that he accomplished. He was a native of Doylestown, Pennsylvania. He attended Harvard University from 1875 to 1879. There he earned a liberal arts degree. He then went on to study law at the University of Pennsylvania from 1880 to 1881. He never practiced law, however, and instead traveled extensively through France and Germany. Mercer was a big believer in the arts and craft movement, which valued handmade items over those that were produced by machines. Eventually, he went on to found the Moravian Pottery and Tile Works in 1898. His tiles have been installed in buildings all over the country, including the Pennsylvania State Capitol, Grauman's Chinese Theater, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, and the Henry Ford House, just to name a few. So back to Fonthill Castle. The building of Fonthill Castle started all the way back in 1907 when Henry Mercer bought 70 acres of farmland. With the help of about 8 to 10 workers and a horse named Lucy, Henry Mercer was able to see his dreams of this very unusual castle take shape. Henry Mercer was about 51 years old when he started construction on Fonthill. To fund the construction, he used an inheritance that he received from his rich aunt, and the cost of Fonthill Castle at the time was about $32,482. It was made from reinforced concrete, which was mixed entirely by hand. Remember, Mercer was a big proponent of the arts and crafts movement, and he wanted things done by hand, not by machines. The castle is comprised of 44 rooms, 5 bedrooms, 18 fireplaces, 10 bathrooms, and 200 plus windows. What really makes this castle extraordinary are the thousands and thousands of Moravian tiles that can be found throughout the entire house. The layout of this castle is also very unusual. There are winding passages and staircases all over this place. I would definitely describe it as very Willy Wonka-esque. Currently, you can only view Fonthill Castle via a 1-hour guided tour, unless you participate in one of their Meander Day tours. During the Meander Day tours, guests are allowed to tour through the home at their own pace, and there are guides stationed throughout a designated tour route to answer any questions. However, these tours tend to be on higher volume days. For example, the most recent was the 4th of July. They also have one on the Labor Day weekend. So it might be a little crowded if you choose to go on one of those tours. It is recommended to reserve your tickets in advance. Luckily, there are many time slots available, so you shouldn't have trouble getting a slot. I was lucky. My most recent tour actually turned into a private tour, which I was really excited about. I do have a brief word of caution for anyone with mobility issues. Fonthill Castle has no ramps or elevators. There are many narrow and uneven passages throughout. The website does not recommend the tour for, and I quote, those with limited mobility issues, issues with stairs, those who cannot stand for long periods of time, or those with concerns about small spaces and claustrophobia. Now, I remember visiting Fonthill Castle for the first time when I was a young girl. I remember going with my mom and one of my sisters, and I really wasn't sure what to expect. Even though my first tour was well over 20 years ago, it really left an impression on me, and I still remember the winding hallways, the vaulted ceilings, and all of those tiles everywhere. In total, I have been inside Fonthill Castle 3 times in my life. So that time when I was a little girl, last year I took a tour in the fall, and then I just recently took another tour this summer in 2025. The regular tour is an hour, and they only show you some of those 44 rooms that are in the house. Now, they just recently started offering a 90-minute behind-the-scenes tour, which gives you a rare glimpse into some of the rooms that are not seen on the regular tour. And you better believe that I will be taking that tour very soon. So you start your tour by checking in at the garage/terrace pavilion. It is a little building that is to the side of Fonthill Castle and was constructed out of the remnants of a stone barn. Here you can pick up some souvenirs or brochures and use the bathroom if you need to. So like I said, on the regular tour, there's only a certain amount of rooms that you see, and there are other tours going on simultaneously. So you'll notice when you're on this tour, as the tour guide enters a room, they will alert everyone else, through a walkie-talkie that they are entering such and such a room. So the following rooms that I'm going to talk about may not be in the exact order that your tour goes in, because I know the tours seem like they will change their course depending on what other tours where. So usually the tour stops outside the main entrance, and the tour guide will give you a little information into Henry Mercer's life and about the Fonthill Castle itself. One really interesting thing to note was that there was a stone farmhouse that was originally on this land, and Mercer incorporated that farmhouse into the concrete construction. So you can see parts of the original farmhouse through the tour. So the first room that you enter is the reception area of the castle, or the entrance. And here you'll notice some low vaulted ceilings that are blackened concrete, and also some tiles that cover the walls. They kind of reminded me of a Persian rug, to be honest with you. Then the tour passes down a hallway into the library. This room is much more impressive than the one you start in. You see these very large windows and many, many books all around. Henry Mercer was very well read and could read in multiple languages. You can find Latin writing in various places all over the castle. And they said he had about or over 6,000 books in his collection. Many of his books he housed here in the library in concrete bookshelves that were numbered using his own numbering system. Kind of reminded me of the old card catalog that we would use in the library before everything went onto computers. The library itself is 2 levels, but the tour never gets to go up to that second level. I'm not even sure how you get up to there. There's probably some winding staircase somewhere. But if you look up, you can see some very high vaulted ceilings that are covered in very colorful tiles. For some reason, it reminds me of candy. I don't know why. Another notable feature in the library is a very large fireplace, which is embellished by brocade tiles, which are 3-dimensional tiles, and they recount the tales of Christopher Columbus. Also in the fireplace, you can see a cast iron stove plate. Henry Mercer collected these stove plates and used them as inspiration for many of his tiles. And a lot more of these stove plates that he collected can be seen at the Mercer Museum, which is about a mile away from Fonthill. Mercer would also visit country sales and use his purchases to decorate parts of his castle. So you'll notice some of those objects he purchased, along with large faded tapestries that were woven in France and purchased in Philadelphia. So one quick tip, if you ever get the chance to visit Fonthill Castle, don't forget to look down when you're walking around. Often you'll see Mercer's famous red quarry tiles on the floor, and they'll also be dotted with mosaics. So these pictures made out of tiles, they're really quite beautiful. Next, the tour moved into the largest room of the castle called the saloon, and this was used for entertaining many of Mercer's guests and showcasing his tiles. You can also find a cardboard cutout of Mercer, which is standing by one of his many fireplaces. Many of Mercer's guests were architects, tile setters, engineers, a lot of people who came to purchase his tiles, and he used the tile works as a showcase so they could see what they looked like up close. And it also is a reason why he had so many guest bedrooms in his castle for the people to come visit him. Mercer made tiles, but he was also a collector of tiles. In one of the columns that you find in the saloon, you can find a tile or tiles that are over 4,000 years old. And they are Babylonian clay tablets from Mesopotamia, which is present-day Iraq, that he purchased in New York. And it was interesting because the tablets themselves are receipts of how many sheep and goats that were sold out of a temple. Then our tour walked up some winding steps, and we stood on a balcony overlooking the saloon. And here you get a really great overhead look of everything down below. We were taken into one of the many hallways that are in this castle, and from this hallway in particular, you can see into what they call the breakfast room. It was part of the original stone farmhouse. It's corded off, so you never get to go up into the breakfast room, but you can kind of see into it from down below. Then we entered this central hallway that was really like a main hub, and it offered about 10 different paths in and out of it. In this hallway, you see a large cardboard cutout of Laura Swain, who was Mercer's loyal housekeeper. She actually was allowed to live in the castle after he died and would sometimes give tours herself through the castle. There's also a concrete keyboard that holds 66 slots and once housed all the keys to every door in the castle. Now there's 44 rooms, but they had 66 doors. And the museum once had a sample key that they could show guests until it was stolen. So now they don't show people anything, and the original keys are held somewhere else. The first guest room that we get to see is the East Room. And here many of the windows are facing east and offer a beautiful view of the front drive, which is lined with London plane trees. One thing that the tour guide liked to point out was that every guest bedroom had a call bell, which they could use to call the farmhouse kitchen and essentially order room service or anything that they needed from the staff below. As you exit the East Room and head into Mercer's dressing room, you pass quickly through the East Room bathroom. This bathroom is actually one of the rooms that I remembered from way back when I was a little girl and coming to Fonthill for the first time. This may sound funny, but the tiles in this bathroom reminded me of these little sponges that were shaped like letters that I would play with in the bathtub when I was a little girl, and maybe that's why it always stuck out to me. After passing through the east bedroom bathroom, then you enter Mercer's dressing room. This room is really rather plain. There's not too much going on, and I guess Mercer just used it to store his clothes and change into. So you see some big wooden furniture, a few tiles, but not too much. Then we headed into the Columbus room, and this one was much more colorful and exciting. If you look up at the ceiling, you see these big brocade tiles. They're colorful, and most things are themed to Christopher Columbus. So in addition to all the Christopher Columbus tiles, there is also this small staircase that you see in the stairs, and it's called Rollo's Staircase, and it's named after Mercer's favorite Chesapeake retriever, Rollo. You can even see Rollo's paw prints pressed into the stairs themselves. Now, we were told by our tour guide that if you follow these stairs, you would pass 2 more stories to the top terrace of the castle, which is about 70 feet in the air. Unfortunately, the tour doesn't take you up there, which I would love to see that, to be honest with you. Then we headed into Mercer's bedroom. Now, this room was noticeably darker than many of the other rooms in the castle. Now, Henry Mercer had several serious diseases and was sick for most of his adult life. In his 20s, he contracted malaria when he was working in the Yucatan Peninsula, and then later he developed a chronic nephritis, which was brought on by supposedly an STD that he had contracted. His eyes eventually became very sensitive to light, which is why he chose kind of a darker bedroom. It's important to note this actually wasn't his original bedroom. He had a bedroom on the east side of the house, which the tour goes into later, that is so much brighter and filled with light. But he lived in this bedroom towards the end of his life, and he actually died in this bedroom when he was about 73. From Mercer's bedroom, you can then move on to the balcony. From here, you can see the beautiful grounds that Fonthill sits on. You can see the outside portions of the house, which was really interesting to look at. You can also see a spring house, which is currently undergoing renovations. In its time, it served as almost like a primitive refrigerator and helped to keep his perishable foods cold. You can also see a concrete pond that was established to help manage some of the water on the property. There are a lot of springs in this area, which is actually what inspired the name of the property, Fonthill. And at one point, Frank Swain, who was the husband of Henry Mercer's housekeeper, and he was also the foreman at the tile works, he tried to keep goldfish there as well at one point. After the tour, you can leave Fonthill Castle and take a closer look at both of these features that you can see from up above on the balcony here. Then we re-entered Fonthill Castle, and we passed through some hallways, passing basically what they called the Chinese rooftop stairs. Our tour guide didn't tell us too much about these tiles. We just kind of walked through, but they were very beautiful, and I'm sure there's a lot of history there about these tiles. Maybe if you take this tour and the tour guide doesn't say anything, you can always ask them about these tiles. Then our tour traveled into Mercer's original bedroom. This one, very different from the first bedroom that we went to, which was darker. This one is light and it's beautiful. Another thing that you can notice is that the floors aren't tiled. They have wood on them. And I'm not exactly sure why they were wood and not tiles, but I'm sure if you asked the tour guide, they would know why that was. Unfortunately, they don't really let you walk around in this room. You're kind of roped off from it, and we really had to quickly move from this space into Mercer's study, which was connected to his bedroom. So again, we entered into his study, which was connected to his original bedroom, and here you can see his extensive pottery collection, which was from Nubia in Egypt, and the room is also decorated in black and white prints, which Henry Mercer chose black and white so that they didn't contrast with his beautiful colored tiles. When you exit the study, you see this long hallway that then leads to the map room as well as the west guest room. Here in this hallway, this is where you can find my favorite tile. I know it sounds kind of impossible to pick a favorite tile out of thousands of tiles, but there's this one tile there. It's beautiful. It has a little house with almost, it looks like citrus trees in front of it, and I just fell in love with it. I actually saw this last year on the tour that I took, and I did a little watercolor sketch of this tile and the Fonthill Castle as itself in one of my sketchbooks because I liked it so much. We barely spent any time looking at the map room. Again, it was one of those rooms you couldn't really walk into, and this was where Mercer would plan some of his trips. He traveled a lot, so I guess he would sit down here and figure out how he was going to travel. Then we entered the second guest room, and this was called the West Room. The most prominent features in this room are very large faded tapestries, as well as a brocade-covered fireplace. The tiles on the fireplace are supposed to depict scenes from the Pickwick Papers by Charles Dickens. I'm not familiar with these stories, so I didn't know what they were showing. So then from the west guest room, we moved into the third guest room that we got to see, and this was the yellow room. This room was thought to be specifically for a lady because of the multiple mirrors and multiple wardrobes, which I'm not sure what they're trying to imply by that, but it definitely has kind of a feel that's a little more feminine. Then we go back downstairs and we enter the last room of the tour, and this is actually my favorite room of the whole tour, the conservatory. This room is bright and cheerful. It has these giant ferns that are hanging in front of the windows. There are these beautiful, almost like Spanish-inspired tiles. I did ask my tour guide from this tour and then the one that I took last year, and I asked both of them what was their favorite room in the entire castle. And I was surprised that both of them had the same answer. They both told me that the morning room was their favorite. Now, on the regular tour, you don't get to see the morning room at all, but they did say it is on the behind-the-scenes tour. So that's another reason why I want to take that tour, because everybody says it's so beautiful. So we'll have to see. Hopefully I'll have a video on that one as well, and I can show you that room too. Then after the tour itself, it was fun to go outside and walk around the building, take a look at all the different windows and the different chimneys coming out. You can get a closer look at the spring house and that concrete pond that you could see from the balcony. It's just a really pretty place. Overall, this was a great tour. It was very interesting. The castle itself is very unusual. There are twists and turns all over it that you wouldn't expect. Like other tours that I've been on that are similar to this, different tour guides will talk about different things. So I got a lot of information with the tour guide I just had, and then I remember the tour guide of last year talking about totally different things that this current tour guide never talked about. So, even if you decide to come more than once, you'll get a different tour each time. Thank you for coming on another art finding adventure. Hope you can check out this place if you're ever in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and have a great day.